Welcome everyone to the final night of May We Help's 10-year anniversary celebration. We kicked it off with keynote speaker Mike Schultz, a 10-time X Games gold medalist and 2-time Paralympian medalist. And we had a great week, and now we're finishing things off with our first ever virtual cooking class. And my name is Rob Seideman. I'm the executive director of May We Help, but in a previous lifetime, I was 20 years in the food industry. And I owned Cooking School of Aspen in downtown Aspen, Colorado for about 10 years, just before I moved to Cincinnati. So this is one of my favorite classes to teach. It was called Presto Pesto, and we are going to do 4 different pesto presentations tonight. And we're going to talk a lot about concepts as opposed to just following a recipe. But that doesn't mean you don't have recipes. Everybody should have a set of recipes in front of them, and you can follow along, obviously. But we are going to focus on concepts because I think it's more fun to cook when you understand concepts and you can get more creative. And nobody's telling you what to do, right? I think my obsession with cooking conceptually as opposed to following a recipe may have more to do with my personality, though. Maybe it is I just like to be a control freak and I don't like people telling me what to do. But if you think about it, people have been telling us how to do things since we were born, right? You're a little kid and your parents tell you what to do, and then you go to school and your teachers tell you what to do, and then you go get a job and your boss tells you what to do. So why would you want to go home and have some recipe tell you what to do? So we're just going to understand the idea of pesto so that you can get creative and make your own pestos without following a recipe. And we're going to start out with a smoked salmon canopy with a dill and macadamia pesto. So let's think about that. What's your basic pesto? It's based your two main ingredients, right? One is basil and the other is pine nuts. So why can't we just understand pesto from that perspective? That you're going to take an herb and you're going to take a nut and you're going to combine them. And you're going to get a pesto as a result. And then your job becomes figuring out what to pair the pesto with. And if you've been a chef for a while, you start to understand those things. You start to understand that dill and smoked salmon go really well together. So why not do a dill pesto with a smoked salmon dish? And you start to understand that mint and lamb go well together. So that's why tonight we're doing a mint pesto to go with our lamb. But if you don't have that sort of familiarity with ingredients, you can refer to my favorite cookbook in the whole world. And of course, it's not really a cookbook because cookbooks are filled with recipes. This is a book that helps you cook conceptually, and it is called the Flavor Bible. And there should be a graphic up there for you to see what the cover of that book looks like. But the Flavor Bible is nothing more than a list of every imaginable ingredient in the world and a corresponding list of those ingredients that best complement the first one. So, for example, if you open up the Flavor Bible and turn it to smoked salmon, you'll see dill in bold type right there looking you in the eye saying, do something with me, pair me with smoked salmon. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And macadamia nuts seem to really pair well with that too. So I just need a knife here, and let's get started. First thing we're going to do is make our crostinis. So we're just going to take a baguette, and you use your bread knife with a serrated edge, and just get a few thin slices here. And I'm not going to do 100 of these because it's more boring than watching somebody cut bread. And we've already got a bunch done for you anyway. So there goes the bread. Then we're going to take a little drizzle of oil. Let's see. We'll use a little extra virgin olive oil for that. Well, I got to introduce you to our guests tonight. This is Lauren and Felice, and they'll be our guests for a little while tonight. All right, so get a little bit of oil on those. A little bit of salt. A little bit of pepper. And while we're toasting these, we might as well get our nuts toasting also, right? So we've got, where are our macadamia nuts? Let's see, here they are. They say roasted on them already, but you know what? If you get them in the oven, it kind of activates the oil and brings out more flavor. So if I could hand those to you, Felice, if you wouldn't mind, please, just throwing them in that oven. Thank you very much.
Any particular shelf or
just that middle shelf, please. Thank you so much. Fabulous. So as soon as the room smells like macadamia nuts, we'll know that they're ready. All right, next step is to get a shallot, because we're going to put a shallot in that pesto. And the shallot's like any other onion. It has a stem end and a root end. We're going to cut the stem end off, and then we're going to cut this in half. And we're going to take a layer of onion off, or in this case, a layer of shallot off. But you notice that we leave the root end intact. And if you look, you can see that every layer of onion attaches itself to the root. Okay? So if you leave the root end intact, your onion always stays together. Then we're just going to put our fingertips up top here and slice across. And we're going to stop just short of the root, because once again, it keeps everything together. The reason we have our fingertips up here is in case the knife goes through, we don't get cut. And if we have another person to introduce you to. This is John Mock. John is our sous chef this evening, but he is also a May We Help board member, a May We Help volunteer, and a chef in his own right. So if the knife did go through here, at least I wouldn't get cut. It might get John, but as long as you don't get yourself, it's not that big a deal. Okay. Then we're going to have the point of the knife here, once again, just short of the root. And we're going to cut across, and you can see that still our onion is staying completely together. Then we're just going to do our knife cuts and get a nice little dice. And there's our dice. Okay? Which we don't really have to do. I just kind of wanted to show you. But since it's all going in the food processor anyway, you didn't really have to dice that shallot. But I did want to show you that trick. All right, so the shallot goes in there. We want to throw a bunch of dill in there. John picked this dill from his garden. Thank you very much. Your recipe says about 2 cups. That's about 2 cups. Okay, so that's there. And then, let's see, let's grab our crostinis. Oh, but you're going to need a hot pad. So let me grab those this time, Felice. So our crostinis are done, our nuts are roasted. Thanks. Thank you. Let's see. We'll add these crostini to these. And let's see if that's too hot for me. I think I can do that. Then we'll get our macadamias in here. Boom. Some salt and some pepper. And then let's talk about oil for a minute. So you'll see in the recipe it calls for a neutral flavored oil. And a lot of times when people make pesto, they use extra virgin olive oil. But extra virgin olive oil, in my mind, is kind of like the school bully. It always wants to be the center of attention. Do you ever notice that? It's really powerful. But if I've got dill picked straight out of John's garden and macadamia nuts that we roasted to bring all the flavors out of, do we really want to overwhelm that with a really strong, too powerful extra virgin olive oil? Not really. In this case, I want a neutral oil, and I like grapeseed oil for that. Mazola corn oil would work fine. Vegetable oil would work fine. But something like an olive oil or a peanut oil, I find that they're too strong. Okay. The other nice thing about grapeseed oil, just so everybody knows, it's a really good oil for cooking. It has a really high, what they call, smoke point. All right, so which is to say that when the oil's on the stove and it starts smoking, it's hot. What's an example of an oil that maybe has a low smoke point?
Extra virgin olive.
Extra virgin olive oil. That's going to burn really fast. So you're not going to get a good sear. You can't get it hot before it starts to burn. Grapeseed oil has a super high smoke point. How about butter? Where does it stand? It's like the lowest. So if grapeseed oil is the highest and butter is the lowest, do you ever have a problem with your butter burning during breakfast? All the time, right? So what I do is I add a little bit of grapeseed oil to my butter in the pan. So the grapeseed oil smoke point's here, the butter smoke point's here. You put them together and you raise the smoke point of your butter without changing the flavor. So that's just a nice little trick to know about. Cool. Okay. So this is grapeseed oil. We're going to put a little bit of that in there. Pestos are so easy. That's another reason to make them. Scrape down the sides. One more. Now, when you're doing this, you kind of want to think about the way people are going to eat it. Sometimes pestos are really oily, and that's fine if you're using a fork and a knife and you're sitting down, but this is going to be a past appetizer. So I don't want the pesto too runny, because it'll just run down somebody's nice shirt, right? So we're not going to put too much more oil in there, just a little bit to hold it together. Be more of a dry type of pesto. And we'll do a wet one for the lamb. Okay. Then we're going to give this a taste, because what's the biggest difference in the whole world between a home chef and a professional chef?
Professional chef, but I don't know.
Yeah, they measure. They just do what everybody tells them to do, whereas the restaurant chef just tastes and adjusts, right? So we're going to taste. It tastes great. We're good. We'll start assembling. But the last thing we have to do is create some roses of our smoked salmon. So we got our smoked salmon here. We're just going to take a slice. I think that's 2 slices. There's a slice of smoked salmon. All we're going to do is cut about, 3/4 of an inch, and then roll it up. And we're going to end up with these little pretty roses. Right, I'll do a couple more for you. Really easy. There's another rose, and we'll do one more. Super easy. They look a lot prettier than you'd think they would be to make. All right, now we can start assembling. We have our May We Help serving platter. A little smear of cream cheese. Scrap that one. And then we're going to talk about garnishing. So for me, a general rule of garnishing is to garnish with an ingredient that is used in the dish. So who's ever been to Denny's? The Grand Slam breakfast, right? Did you ever notice that every dish at Denny's is garnished with a sprig of curly parsley? It's never used in the...
I guess so. I have never thought of that.
Yeah, so think about it next time you're at Denny's. We're not going to do that. We're going to garnish with ingredients that are used in the dish itself. Just like so. We'll take some of our pesto.
Smells incredible.
Right? It smells like John's garden. Hello. And we'll take some of our roses and put them on top. And then what we'll do is ask John if he might finish the rest of these, please. That would be awesome. And while we're doing that, Kate can talk about the wine.
All right, that sounds great. Hang on a second, let me open this. All right, so what I've chosen, well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I am co-owner of, with my husband Marty, of Marty's Hops and Vines. It's a retail boutique of artisanal wines and beers, craft beers only. And we proudly celebrated our 10th anniversary just last year. So pre-COVID-19, we also had a small restaurant in addition to a bar where we served 18 wines by the glass, and we had 6 draft pours. And those are rotating beer craft for the people who wanted to accompany those who were wine drinkers. So, tasting wines is part of my job. That's probably, somebody has to do it, so that's probably the best part of it. And I enjoy it fully. When Rob and Brianne asked me to select the wines for this, for these pasta pesto dishes, I was excited because I thought, cool, I not only get to eat a really gourmet chef's fare, but I get to pair it. So I thought, and I really liked the challenge. I also like to do something like this in support of a great food for a great mission. And that I just thought that excited me a lot. So wine you choose for food neither should overpower it, nor underwhelm it, nor clash with it. So to me, my philosophy on picking wines for food is to try to enhance it with the flavors that he's already used for the food. So that's why I picked these wines. The first one is a Gerard Bertrand Thomas Jefferson Crémant de Limoux Rosé. It's a bubbly. First of all, it reminds you the color. It's a salmon color, so it reminds you of the color of the salmon. Secondly, the texture, as you can see, it's a really fine bubble. The texture is a real fine bubbles, and so it kind of complements and lifts the creaminess of the salmon, the cream cheese, and the macadamia nuts that he just, the richness and the creaminess of all that. So that kind of lifts the product up a little, the dish a little bit. It's got a little bit, it's redolent of strawberry and raspberry flavors, so it brings in a little bit of fruit in there to complement the dill and herbal taste of the dill. And then you get, it kind of ends with a brioche and fresh bread taste in your mouth. So it kind of just like reminds you of the taste of the bread that it's on, and it complements all of these components of the food. So to me, it was the perfect wine to go with that type of food. So, and that's what you want wine to do, to get the best experience out of what you're eating, so that you love the wine as well as the food. And that's it for the Crémant de Limoux. Enjoy.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Welcome to
Thanks,
taste
John.
it.
And we've got our appetizers ready to serve. You can try it with some wine. So that was Kate Weldesofer from Marty's Hops and Vines. Take a couple more. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then we'll give this to you guys. You're welcome. All right. Let's go to the second course. Crab cakes. So, an herb that goes well with crab cakes is chives. So for this dish, we're going to do a chive and almond pesto. There's a few steps. We're also going to do an aioli. That's going to be, you can see kind of a pattern. We had in the last dish, we had the bread and then the cream cheese, and the cream cheese helped hold the pesto in place. In this case, we've got the crab cake, and then the aioli is going to help hold the pesto in place. So let's start with the pesto. We've got some fresh chives, a bunch of them. And we can just give these a rough chop, right? Because they're going right into the food processor. And we need some almonds. Thank you very much. Which we're going to toast also. And Felice is our toaster. Thank you very much. Oh, she's busy though. Let's think about our garnish right now though, while we've got the chives out. So clearly, obviously you can do this any way you want, but this is how I like to do it.
Rob,
Yes.
they wanted to see what the final dish looked like.
Oh, yeah. Or are they gone? We can make some more,
Disappeared. Oh, here it is.
and we'll do another presentation. Oh, beautiful. Thanks, John. Final dish. Minus most of them. Thanks, man. All right, so we take our chives. We're going to get rid of the brown ends or the thin ends, and just take the prettiest parts of the chive. Something like that. So there's not really a wrong or right way to do it. Okay, while the almonds are toasting, let's start our aioli. And we'll do that in this food processor. Maybe. Okay. So we need an egg. And we need some garlic, right? Because an aioli is basically a homemade garlic mayonnaise. That's how I like to think about it. 2 cloves of garlic. So just a little pop. Get the peel off. And since this is going in the food processor, we don't really need to do anything more to the garlic. But since we're all here together, I want to show you my favorite garlic trick in the whole world. So what it entails is turning the knife over, all right? And this is a super cool trick to show your friends and just show yourself off with, until out of habit, you do that. And then you just don't look that cool anymore, right? So just don't do that. But it's hard because we're so used to doing stuff like that, right? But don't do it. So we're gonna turn the knife over, bring the garlic kind of close to you, and then just look how easy that is. So any recipe that calls for chopped garlic, you've got those garlic presses, you know, that takes forever to clean and everything. You're done. There's your chopped garlic. You can throw that in the food processor. But what if your recipe, not that this one does, but what if your recipe calls for pureed garlic? We're going to put a little bit of salt on here. Not because we're trying to salt our garlic. We're putting the salt on there to add coarseness, so that it helps us break it down. Because now we're going to do, if you go to culinary school, this is a very highly technical term. It's called smishing. And we're just smishing. Okay? And I'm going to slow it down so you can see, but we're really just smishing this against the cutting board with the salt. And you can go slow, you don't have to go fast, but as you become more comfortable with the motion, you can do it really fast. And in just a matter of seconds, you've got an awesome garlic puree. Boom. Pretty easy, right? Okay, that's going to go in there. Once again, you didn't have to do that for the pesto since it's going, or for the aioli since it's going in the food processor anyway. But I really wanted to show you that trick. I think our almonds are done. Does the room smell like almonds? Yeah. You can use a timer, but I kind of like using my nose. Let those cool off a little bit before we put them into our pesto. And by the way, after a while you start to lose the feeling. I have no feelings. emotionally or physically. Okay, all right. Going back to our aioli, we need cayenne and dry mustard. Thanks, John. Just a pinch of each. And if you didn't have dry mustard, what are you going to do? I can tell you what I don't want you to do. Don't get in the car and drive to the store to get dry mustard. Maybe use a different spice, or maybe use whole mustard, or whatever. But don't get in the car. It just makes cooking too stressful. You know what I mean? And who knows, you might create the next new best dish that's never been made before. Who knows how the history of the Caesar salad? You know the history of the Caesar salad? Where it was invented? So this is a good story. When you start cooking without a recipe, you might be the creator of the next Caesar salad recipe. Here's what happened. There's a chef named Cesar in Tijuana, Mexico, of all places. The Caesar salad was created in Tijuana, Mexico. I know, it's so hard to believe.
So everyone's been butchering his name for...
Forever. Yep, but not his salad. Although some have butchered his salad. So Cesar, as so often happens to lots of restaurateurs, his supplies didn't show up. But he's got a family counting on him to do business, and he's got clientele counting on him to open his restaurant. And they want to be fed. So he looked around, he goes, what do I have? I've got oil in the pantry. I got a tin of sardines, or anchovies, in the pantry. I got the best limes in the world, because we're in Mexico. I got eggs, because there's chickens running around everywhere. And I got a block of hard cheese, probably not Parmesan or Reggiano, but I got a block of hard cheese that doesn't even need to be refrigerated, because it's just a big block of hard cheese. And he's got lettuce growing in the garden. And he created the Caesar salad completely out of necessity. So when you stop cooking with a recipe and you start just looking around and thinking conceptually what's going to work, you might be the Lauren salad. You never know. Okay, we got dry mustard and white pepper in there. Now we're going to do a little bit of acid. So, wow. Put some lemon juice in there. I just like lemon. I like the taste of lemon juice and I like the taste of rice vinegar. But if you didn't have one or the other, please don't go to the store. Just be, okay. And what if you don't have rice vinegar? Well, just use any vinegar. It doesn't matter. You're thinking conceptually, right? So I want something acidic. That's what I'm going for, is something acidic. All right, rice vinegar, lemon juice, garlic's in there, egg is in there, and now we just need our oil. Once again, a neutral flavored oil. Because we want our chives and crab to shine. Is this the right one? This one. So the key here is to open your food processor. There we go. Oh, there we go. That's the slowest drizzle that you can. Because what these things need to do is emulsify. We'll talk about that when I'm not talking over the food processor. But a slow, thin, steady stream of oil. I'm sure everybody at home is on the edge of their seat watching this. But you can already see it starting to emulsify. And emulsify means that you bring together two ingredients that don't like to be together. Like oil and vinegar, oil and acid. So you have what's called emulsifying agents. Egg is an emulsifier. That'll help. Like if you're making a salad dressing and your oil and vinegar, you want them to stay together, throw in an egg or throw in some mustard. Those are both emulsifiers. And if you're reading your labels at home and you see something called lecithin, you often see that. That's an emulsifier. It's just the industrial version of an egg or mustard. Now you can start to hear it. You don't even have to see it. You can hear that we're getting a mayonnaise or an aioli. But it's basically homemade mayonnaise. All right, and that's done. And it's beautiful. Look at that. All right, homemade garlic mayonnaise. So when we had Cooking School of Aspen, we had a kids program too. And just for fun, I would often ask the kids, do you know where mayonnaise comes from? And it's kind of a hard question. I mean, even adults sometimes don't really know, like, what is mayonnaise? And some of the kids would say, like, mayonnaise tree and some, funny stuff. But that's where mayonnaise comes from. All right. Now we have to make some crab cakes. So we'll need a bowl. We'll need some crab. So, good cooking starts with good ingredients. You can't make good food out of bad ingredients. So start with high quality ingredients, and the rest often will take care of itself. So when it comes to crab, if you can get, fresh crab, that would be amazing. But we're in Cincinnati, we're not going to get a bunch of that. So when you get, crab like this, just get jumbo lump. In this case, they called it colossal. Yeah, I was looking for jumbo lump. They sold me on colossal. But you can see they're just big pieces of crab, right? And that's about the only one that I would even ever do this with, okay? So we have some crab, and we need then some bell pepper. And it just adds a little bit of color and a little bit of sweetness, and that's why I like it. And it's an opportunity to talk to you about cutting bell peppers. So if you cut kind of right where the square, right where the indentation is, you can often leave behind the white pith, and then it just saves you a step. So there's our nice little fillet of red bell pepper. And let's just real briefly talk about knife skills. So that's like the motion of a train engine, right? So just kind of, to me, that's my favorite visual. And that's what your cutting hand's going to be doing. And then your opposite hand is like a claw hand. And as long as that knife is up against these two knuckles, you're never going to cut yourself, as long as your hands are in a claw. So that's what we're doing. We're just doing that motion and keeping a claw hand. You don't have to go fast. We're just keeping that motion going and keeping ourselves safe with the claw hand. Bundle those up. Here's our red bell pepper. We're going to throw in some scallions just for some flavor. Once again, there's that engine motion. And you can make these your crab cakes. You don't have to put red bell pepper in. You can put anything in there that you want. And it calls for a little bit of mustard, right? Let's see, I think that's in here. Calls for a little bit of aioli. There's our mustard. Here's our aioli. And some salt and pepper. So you see I'm always grinding the pepper. I'm not using already ground black pepper. The reason is if you buy already ground black pepper, everything that's wonderful about it has just like ethereally gone away. It's all about the volatile compounds in the pepper. It's in the air. Everything that's wonderful about pepper goes into your nose. It doesn't happen on your tongue. And once you grind it, within about 15 minutes, all that wonderful aromas, they're gone. So if you buy already ground black pepper, it's fine, but just know that all you're adding to your food is heat. You're not adding what's so wonderful about black pepper. And if you think about it, black pepper used to be more valuable than gold. So back in the spice trade route days, when you had to go get black pepper, you had to travel down the coast of, the European coast to the coast of South Africa, and then up the Indian Ocean coast to get to the spices. Then you had to come back. It took years. And so by the time the black pepper got to Europe, it was worth more than gold. And so I like to think about that every time I see ground black pepper at the store. I'm like, I'm not doing that. It's just not going to happen. All right. I did it right. Let's see. We got crab, egg, bell pepper, scallions, aioli Dijon, salt and pepper, and then we just need some sort of something to think. Oh, look at that. John's good. He's so good. Thank you. All right. Dang. Right. Oh, and an egg. I didn't put the egg in there. Or did I? No, I didn't. Thank you very much. Where is that egg? Here we go. And that's how easy making crab cakes is. Let's turn this up a little bit. And then we're going to get our hands involved. And let's break this out. If we're making mini crab cakes that are going to be served as a past appetizer. So I kind of need to break up these big pieces of crab a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. But let's just say we weren't going to do a past appetizer tonight. Let's say we were going to do, let's say it was Sunday brunch, and we're going to do big crab cakes. Then I'm going to leave the big pieces of crab whole, all right? But for the past appetizers, we're going to break them up a little bit. And then the motion for making the minis is kind of, I like to visualize a potter's wheel. So I get a little handful of crab, kind of compress it a little bit, and then hold my hand open like that with my thumb on top, and then just spin it like a potter's wheel. And boom, there's a mini crab cake. All right, I'll do a few more. Little bundle of crab, hand extended, thumb on top, spin it like a potter's wheel. Boom, one more. And then what we want to do with these is get them in the fridge for like a half an hour just to firm up a little bit so they don't break apart when we're cooking them. And there you go. Easy enough, right? Any questions on those? Okay. So I made these in advance, and we're going to fry these now. So these just came out of the fridge. And maybe while these are frying, this is a great time for Kate to talk about her wine pairing. So you guys don't have to watch me fry, because there's nothing more boring than that.
For the second dish, the crab, I have chosen to do the Pine Ridge. It's a Chenin Blanc and Viognier. You can see the label here. It is a white blend, obviously, of Chenin Blanc and Viognier. It is crisp and vivacious wine, if I can release it with a handy-dandy screw-top lid. This is an aromatic white wine, a white blend that is kind of reminiscent of honeysuckle and orange blossom at the same time. The flavors are somewhat complex. You get pineapple flavors, crispness of the lychee. You have ruby, grapefruit, lemon curd, and even Granny Smith apples. If you have a real imagination, you can really taste a lot of these flavors in this wine. It finishes juicy, bright, and really fresh. I thought this would go well with the crab. It's not a sweet wine, but its subtle sweet juiciness of the tropical fruits complement the sharpness and the lemoniness, or the sharpness of the mustard, garlic, and the pepper. Its citrusy flavor and the acidity complements the dish as well with the acidity of the lemon, and it cleanses the palate. And what more would you want in order to accept the food? It cleanses the palate and makes you wish you want to eat more of that stuff and drink more wine. So I'm going to get you another glass here. Excuse me. Forgot to set you up with. Let me get you. Do you need another one? No, you got two empty ones, right? Okay. And this blend, by the way, is from California. So this is my only U.S. wine, but it's a really good. It's a really good, nice California wine. These are all table wines, by the way, so they are very reasonable prices and it's approachable. And all of these wines are wines that you can actually drink buy it themselves too as well. So.
Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
All right, so I think our oil's almost heated up, and now we can start frying. Yep.
If anybody has questions about the line, I'll be more happy to answer. Or not, but
So everything, the crab's cooked. So all we're really trying to do here is just get them nice and golden brown, give them some good color, give them a nice little crunch on the outside.
Are you actually cooking them through, or are you just kind of browning?
Really just getting them, they're cooked. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's the eggs raw, but it's going to cook really fast. So we're really just getting some color on them and a nice little crispy top.
That's grapeseed oil.
Once again, yeah, we're cooking with grapeseed oil. Actually, no, I think I might have used the corn oil, but it would have been a great choice. The Mazola was closer.
And the level of the oil is about halfway up the crab.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, it's about a third to halfway up. So that would be called, if you were reading a recipe, that would be called a shallow fry. So there's deep fry, and this would be a shallow fry. And then there's just a thin glaze of oil on the bottom, which would just be a fry or what's known as a saute. Does anybody speak French?
Oui.
Oui? So what is,
Wait to say that for you.
do you legitimately speak French? Do you legitimately?
Steve speaks French.
So what is saute, the verb, the root saute?
Saute.
The jump, right?
Saute is the jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Americans use the verb saute when we're just frying something in oil, but really saute is that. It's when you're making the food jump. The oil's hot, you're making the food jump. So a saute is really not a saute, but Americans don't like to use the word fry because it makes us think we're eating fatty food. So we say it's sauteed, but really
Sounds
it's...
fancier.
All right, so see the color on there? So, when you're cooking, this happens to all of us all the time. Let's say you're at the store and you got your recipe with you, and you remember my voice saying, don't buy any crab unless it's jumbo lump. And the store doesn't have jumbo lump crab. But you had in your mind that you were going to make crab cakes. So what do? You got to pivot, right? Or you buy the crappy crab. But who wants to do that? Let's say you go to the store and you have in mind that you're going to get halibut, but the halibut's not fresh. What do? You got to pivot. You can't buy the unfresh halibut just because it's in your head. So what you do is you go to your flavor Bible book and you say, okay, we're not going to make crab cakes because I don't have good crab, but the salmon looks remarkable. But what pesto am I going to put with the salmon? So one thing you could do is shop with your flavor Bible. You go to your fishmonger and he or she says, the salmon's great today. I suggest you get the salmon. You're like, oh shoot, I was going to do these crab cakes with a pesto on top. I open my flavor Bible, go to salmon, and what herb would pop out? Probably dill. So maybe you do the dill pesto instead, and you just completely pivot.
Have you ever been in the grocery store and see someone carrying their flavor body like that?
In Aspen, all the time. It was hilarious. Yes, it was very funny. And how do you avoid purchasing bad fish? One way is to understand, yeah, you smell it. So if the fish smells fishy, It should smell like fish, but it shouldn't smell fishy. There's a difference. So don't buy any fish that smells fishy. You ever been at the store where they cut the pieces of fish and put them on a styrofoam thing and then put plastic on top? That's the worst thing you can do. What makes fish spoil is contact with air. So the more you chop it up, the more contact with air that it gets, so the quicker it spoils. That's why when you go to a nice fish store, there's a big chunk of fish and they cut yours to order. All right?
What about those vacuum seal packs? Are those pretty?
They're better, but
Okay.
still, you're just keeping the fish whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do when I'm shopping for fish and I see and I poke a hole in the plastic and I smell it. If it doesn't smell good, I put it back. And then what I do is I put my hands in the hole and I rip open all the tops of the fish.
Gotcha.
And I sleep really well at night because I've kept you from going home with bad fish. Right? I feel really good about myself.
Bob, I have a question.
Yes.
Cooking fish. When you cook fish, I've often heard that when you cook like a bone-in chicken or bone-in anything, that it's often tastes a lot more. It tastes a lot better.
It does. The bone
Then you
imparts
do.
all that wonderful flavor.
Does that hold true for a fish?
Sure does.
Yeah.
It absolutely 100% does. Yes. All right, so there's our crab cakes. We're going to set them down on our tray garnished with chive.
It smells nice. Wow. So is that the same thing for steaks, that you shouldn't buy them in a package? You should get them from the,
It's a little different with
Let's go with
steak.
the meat.
It's a little
Okay.
different with steak.
it can be exposed to air and that's okay?
Because that would be called dry aging, so actually it's kind of a plus when it comes to steak. So it's
Okay.
all right. We're gonna let those cool off for a minute before we put the aioli on top because we don't want them to melt the aioli. So we'll just give it 1 minute. Any questions? Okay. All right. So let's think about this for a minute. What if this were a luncheon? So we talked about doing a big crab cake, right? Oh, we need to finish our pesto. So we would make these a big crab cake, maybe put it on some lettuce leaves, right? And then we put the aioli on top. But then the pesto that we would make, we could make it saucier, like looser, like more like a sauce than a dry pesto. Because we're sitting down and we have napkins and we don't have to worry about it. But these are passed, and so we kind of want a drier pesto.
Do those keep well, or do you have to make
The
them
pestos?
fresh? Or the crab cakes? Or do you want them fresh?
Fairly fresh. Crab and lobster spoil really quickly. They just do. Crab, lobster, and shrimp. They just spoil so quickly. So I wouldn't make it in advance. But you could freeze those.
Oh, you could freeze them?
Yes.
Once they're already fried?
Yes. Well, you could freeze them and then fry them too. But that'd be hard putting them in the hot oil. But you could
If
freeze them
not,
like
it would
this.
last Maybe like a day or two in
Yeah.
the refrigerator?
Yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up, though, because we should really talk about this. Pesto was invented to extend the life of the herb. Right? Because once you make a pesto, you got 2 or 3 weeks with that. But basil, once you pick it at home, it's going to spoil pretty quick. And the birthplace of pesto is Liguria, Italy. So when you travel, like the Cinque Terre, and that's in Liguria, that area right along the coast is the birthplace of pesto. And they teach it. They love teaching pesto. They have lots of pride. All right. A little salt, a little pepper, a little bit of a neutral oil, and a food processor lid. Got these all mixed up. Okay. Boom, that's it. We're done. Give it a little taste. Just make sure it tastes good. Should taste like John's Garden. It does.
So if you're making like an oil just for a salad, do you use an emulsifier often, like an egg or a mustard or something like that?
Yes, unless I want it to be that broken up, the kind of a broken vinaigrette, because that can be a pleasant look too. You know what I mean? It really just depends on your application. But yes,
And what about your pepper grinder? Do you go for like a finer grind or a coarser grind, or does it not really?
that's personal, I
Not really
think.
It's personal. Okay.
So are you a fine pepper
Well, the
person
one
or
that
are you
I
a coarse
have is
pepper
really
person?
coarse. It just happens to be coarse. I didn't really make the choice, but yeah.
Yeah, I like coarse grain myself. For most things. But that's a big difference.
What else can you use that aioli with?
Oh my goodness. Anywhere you would put mayonnaise. And I warn you now, as much as you might like mayonnaise, I love mayonnaise, but once you try this, there's no going back. Ever.
And how
There's-
long will that stay in the fridge for?
Pretty good, like a week, maybe 10 days.
Okay.
Do you like artichokes?
Yes.
You could dip the artichokes in an aioli. That's very classic. All right.
You put other flavors in your aioli?
You could. You can put anything in there. You could put jalapenos. That's what my son would do. All right, we're going to get our chive almond pesto. Put it on top.
Whenever I follow Caesar salad recipes, they always only want the yolks in the mayonnaise, but you use the whole egg. Is there
When I do a Caesar, I just use the yolks.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yep, this was just a little bit different, but I don't think a Caesar would be ruined. It's just richer
I
if
see.
you use
Okay,
all the
okay.
yolks. You know what I mean? It just tastes better. Because the white doesn't really bring much flavor. That's why thin,
You use the whole egg to make the aioli, is that right?
to make the aioli, yes. So once again, if this were a luncheon and these were big crab cakes, we just add a bunch more oil to this, turn it into a sauce, and that's how we would serve it. Oops, one more. Pardon me just for a moment. Thank you very much. All right. Mini crab cakes with a chive almond pesto. I'll let you guys dig in first. Oh, yeah. Hey, Kate, can you bring that over in front of a camera here? Maybe. Sorry. That's a good idea, Katie. Thank you. I'll just set it right there so everybody can see. Thank you. Good?
Yeah.
All right. Is Any questions on the crab cakes? Otherwise, we're going to move on to our lamb dish.
The chive and the garlic combo is just
Pretty good, huh?
incredible.
Yay. Yay. All right. All right, rack of lamb with mint and hazelnut pesto. So I've found that Cincinnatians don't eat a lot of lamb.
It does, it does.
You eat lamb?
I do, and
You do?
whenever I look for it online, then it's hard. They don't have that much variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even had people call me today saying, I can't find racks of lamb. What do I do? I like the rack of lamb for this dish, but it's not critical. You could use a leg of lamb and just cut slices and not serve it as an appetizer. You could just serve it more saucy. You know, make a more oily pesto with more oil. You could use lamb chops. What I like about this is it's a nice pastap, and you can grab the rib bone, and it can be the handle. So I'm going to show you how to do that.
If you can't find something like that, can you use ground lamb and then just fry it into
Sure. Yeah, you can actually, there's ground lamb all over. Every Kroger has ground lamb. I don't know what everybody's doing with it, but they have it.
I just made it, that's my favorite red meat.
Favorite red meat is lamb?
I don't like meat.
Well, that's because you're a red wine lover.
That's right.
Every red wine lover loves lamb because lamb, the fattiness in lamb tends to, in my opinion, you probably know way more about it than me, but it tends to kind of neutralize the tannin and allow all the flavors to just come forth, which is nice. All right, so this, when you expose the rib bone like this, it's called Frenching the lamb. All right, this is partially Frenched. I want to, and you could use this if you didn't want to mess around with it anymore, but I want a bigger handle. Maybe it's a guy thing, but I want a bigger handle. So what I don't want to do is interrupt and cut into the beautiful center part of that meat, right? So I'm going to put my knife just to the end of it there so I don't cut into any of the meat. And I'm going to line up my knife so it comes out on the same way on this side. And that's kind of my guide. Then I'm just going to slide my knife down the side of the rib bone up until I hit my knife slice. Just like so. Then we're going to go in and take those pieces out. We're just creating bigger handles. Or if you were in culinary school, a prettier Frenching of the lamb.
They wouldn't shrink naturally.
Would that shrink back a little bit, but not as much as we want. We're just peeling back fat and the gristle, exposing more rib bone. It takes a little bit of finessing. And you can continue to clean this as much as you want. Depends how perfect you want it. But I don't want to waste your time with a whole bunch of that today, so we did one of these in advance. But you get the idea. We're going to keep, you're just going to keep peeling this gristle back until your rib is just completely beautiful and perfect. Okay? We're going to hit this with some salt and pepper. And then we need to deal with that fat, okay? Because we want it because it's flavor, and it's going to really help with our red wine. We just talked about that. So we don't want to get rid of it, but we don't want to eat soft fat. We want crispy fat. So we're going to take this over to the stovetop, and we're going to put it on a very low heat. So it's on the lowest it'll go. I'm just going to set it in there. Quite honestly, that pan has a little bit of lamb fat in it because from the first rack that I cooked. But I started in a dry pan. You don't need to put oil in this pan at all because that fat is going to render. All right. So while that's doing its thing, let's talk a little bit about chef grammar for a minute. If you watch the Food Network, or any food person, chefs always put prepositions on the end of these weird verbs. Like they always talk about rendering out the fat. That's how you know they're a chef. You're just rendering the fat. But they sear up things when you just should sear things. It's just a funny chef thing. I don't know how it came to be. All right. So that's the finished one. All right. And let me just wash my hands real quick because it has lamb on them. And let's make another pesto. So this one is, because mint goes great with lamb, right? It's kind of a natural pairing. So I was trying to think what nut would go well with it, and I tried a few different ones. I knew the mint would work, and I ended up using hazelnuts. Seemed to go really well. But if you didn't have hazelnuts at home, don't get in the car. Just find a nut, and it'll work.
What's a good alternative?
Another good alternative, I think almonds would be a great alternative. I think walnuts would be a pretty good alternative too. Because walnuts are really high in tannin too, and maybe the fat in the lamb will help mellow those also. Well, we'll see. Okay, but these are hazelnuts.
Do you use peanuts for any of this or not?
Oh my God, no. But it kind of brings up something I wanted to do in class anyway, which is come up with our own. I was going to give you guys a protein and say come up with a pesto for it. We could do that anyway. Let's do that. Let's start because that's easier. What if you didn't have lamb or crab cakes or smoked salmon? What if you had a pork roast in the oven or a pork roast in the fridge? What pesto could you put with it? What's an herb that goes well with pork?
Is thyme? I mean, thyme does pretty well.
I think a thyme pesto would be delicious.
Rosemary?
Rosemary. Yeah, a rosemary pesto. How delicious would that be? Or a sage pesto. Like a sage walnut pesto, wouldn't that be delicious? Right? So now let's think back. And that's how I just want you to get creative like that. Start with your protein, or you can go by the Flavor Bible and just go to pork, and it'll tell you which herbs go well with it. But let's say the Flavor Bible's being shipped to you, Amazon Prime, tomorrow, and you have a pork roast you have to cook tonight. So you just have to think about it. What goes well with pork? I think sage, rosemary, any of those, thyme would go great. But let's work backwards. What if we were to start with the nut? What protein should we go and buy? Or what ingredient should we go and buy that would be cool with a nut? That's a tough one, a peanut. Something pesto. Oh, you know what? So where do you find, I find a lot of peanuts in Asian food. So maybe an Asian dish. What if you just did, what if you just did like stir-fried shrimp and served it with a peanut pesto? That would be delicious.
Peanuts and what else?
I don't know, we need an herb. What herb would go well with shrimp? Do you guys know the herb shiso? Shiso is an Asian herb. So that would work. I think basil and peanuts would work really good. I think that'd be delicious. There's a Southeast Asian trilogy of herbs, which is cilantro, basil, and mint. Who's to say you couldn't put 3 different herbs in a pesto? It really is known as the Southeast Asian trilogy of flavors, cilantro, basil, and mint. I like that idea. Cilantro, basil, mint, peanut pesto. And we'll name it after you. Mint. There's John's beautiful mint. Just going to throw that in there. We'll save these for a garnish. It needs some garlic. How many cloves? A couple. Throw some garlic in there, and then it calls for balsamic. What do you guys know about balsamic? Anything? Anybody traveled to Italy before?
Yeah, but balsamic?
So,
like aged?
yeah, it's aged. We actually have a graphic up on the screen for you to look at. But what you see on, we'll just back up to Italy in general. One of my favorite lessons I ever learned about cooking, and particularly Italian cooking, is there's no such thing as Italian cooking. There's only the regional cuisine of Italy, which is to say that every region is very distinct in its cuisine and culture. For example, we talked about Liguria being the birthplace of pesto. Well, there's Parmesan and pesto, right? But you would never put Parmesan on your seafood in Liguria, they'll kill you. But 2 hours to the east is Emilia-Romagna, where they put Parmesan on everything. It's really weird. Who could explain it? We were talking about truffles earlier. Here's one of my favorite stories about that sort of illustrates that there's no such thing as Italian cooking. There's only the cuisines, the regional cuisines of Italy. So I had a tour group of 14 people, and we took them to 2 different regions because it was really cool. If you compare 2 different regions, you really understand the regional cooking of Italy. So we did Umbria for 3.5 days and Emilia-Romagna for 3.5 days, and they're adjacent to each other. We started in Emilia-Romagna. I'm sorry, Tuscany and Umbria are adjacent to each other. We started in Tuscany for 3.5 days, and our chef was Piero Farini. And all the women loved Piero Farini, and they just went, "Oh, Piero, we love you." I mean, he was a handsome Italian guy with an accent. And we spent 3.5 days with Piero. All the women fell in love with him. And then we went to Umbria, and we went truffle hunting for black truffles. And we had just handfuls. It was amazing. So we hunted in the morning, and then we cooked all our truffles in the afternoon. And then the trip was over. And the group said, "We want to show Piero our appreciation. Let's get Piero a giant truffle. If we all chip in $50, we could get him like $1,000 truffle." I was like, wow. Yeah. So we got him this amazing truffle. I mean, off the charts truffle. We had to go back to Tuscany anyway to catch our flight. So we stopped by Piero's place, and we presented him with this gift of gold. And he went, "Oh, thanks." And everybody was so disappointed. But he didn't care. He's not into truffles. It's not his culture. It's not his cuisine. He could care less. And I'm on the bus kind of telling everybody was just demoralized. I'm like, "But it wasn't that a great lesson? Now you understand there's only..." But anyway. All right. Oh, so in one region, Emilia-Romagna, there's a town called Modena, and that's where balsamic is made. All right? And they've been making it the same way forever. It's actually monitored by the Italian government. And here's how they make it. They crush this grape called a Trebbiano grape. They just crush it into what they call a musto, which is just crushed grapes. Throw it in wooden barrels and let it age for sometimes as long as 25 years, sometimes as long as 50 years, sometimes as long as 100 years. Those 100-year bottles are about $200 to buy. But it's pure gold. It's just magical stuff. But here's what I find most fascinating about balsamic in Modena. The wood imparts such a unique flavor. It's so critical to the flavor that the balsamic eventually has, that when the wood starts to rot, because balsamic makers, they're generations old. All those guys, they've been doing it for 4, 5, 6 different generations. So when the wood starts to rot, they don't replace the barrel, they build a new barrel around it. It's fascinating. Anyway, we're not using fancy balsamic today, because you don't really need to, but it's kind of fun to talk about.
What type of balsamic are you using?
This is actually a 25-year balsamic. It's not bad, to tell you the truth. And when I got here, I had remembered because this is not my kitchen, and I'm going to talk about whose it is in just a moment. But when I got here, it was like, okay, I got everything. And then I was like, oh my God, I forgot balsamic. But our hosts today are Joe and Lorraine Marinick. This is their fabulous kitchen. And we can't thank them enough. They've been huge supporters of May We Help. And I figured if anybody was going to have a good bottle of balsamic around, it would be Joe and Lorraine Marinick. And I did find this 25-year bottle in the pantry right there, thank goodness. All right. So now we got some grapeseed oil here. And this will be our next pesto. And one of these fits. Boom. How easy was that? Now we've got our lamb. Let's look at this lamb though. See how it's rendering. Okay, you can see that it's starting to brown a little bit. You can see it's starting to lose some of its fat. And we'll flip it, put it in the oven. And that's how that one's going to get finished off. That's our pasta water for our next course.
What temperature do you put it on?
It's at 425. You could cook it at 350 if you wanted. Here's my general rule of thumb for Depends how focused you are. If you got a bunch of people in the kitchen with you and you're drinking, I'd put it at like 350. Gives you a bigger window of opportunity. Right? The higher you turn your oven at, you better be focused, because when it's ready, it's going to be ready. And I tend to talk a lot. I tend to get sidetracked. I might put it low, but I'm pretty focused tonight, so I'm putting it higher. All right, here's our lamb. Pretty easy now to cut through these bones. And let's set that on a pretty serving platter. Wow. God, he's good. Really, the best rule of thumb I can tell you is just call John. Have him be with you in the kitchen. And he's got these beautiful herbs that he'll bring you. All right, we're just going to lay these out here. These might even be a little big for a past app, in which case you've got plates. But I do want to show everybody what it looks like if you did decide to go with a past app. And that one that's in the oven lends itself probably better to a past app.
So how long do you roast those for?
Well, I'm going to say about 10 to 12 minutes at 425. I didn't set a timer. Once again, I could have something to do with my personality. But everybody's oven is different. I don't know this oven. I've never cooked in this oven before. Ovens are calibrated different. Lambs are, the racks of lamb are all different sizes. So how do you know? Actually, we're going to do it when that one comes out of the oven, and I'll show everybody. But you press on it. So let's do this together, okay? So you had your rack of lamb, right? Take your index finger and put it to your thumb. Don't smush them together. Just let them barely touch. Then take this hand and press on the fleshy part of your hand there. All right, when you press on the meat, and then you press on there, if they feel the same, it's rare. Now take your middle finger and barely touch it to your thumb. Feel how it firms up? Now press it. Generally speaking, that's medium rare. Now go to your ring finger. That's medium well. And then go to here, and it's done.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool, right? So when you're grilling or whatever, press on your meat, press right there, wherever they feel the same. That's your level of doneness.
Is that with all meats?
Yeah. Well, chicken, steak, pork, lamb. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Some people use their face, and we used to joke in Aspen because there was so much plastic surgery that everything's well done. Anyway, that's how you do it. Yeah, it's kind of fun. And while we're talking about meat, then a really critical thing is when you take it out of the oven to let it rest. Anybody ever heard that term?
Yeah.
Let the meat rest. So who's ever taken a big roast out of the oven and cut right into it immediately? It always looks the same. It's dry and gray on the outside and kind of more raw and juicy on the inside, right? That's what happens if you cut into it immediately after it comes out of the oven. That's because the juices in meat always move away from your heat source. So if your meat's in the oven, it's 360 degrees of heat. Where are all the juices going? To the center of the meat. They're hiding from the heat in the center of the meat. So if you take your meat out and you cut right into it, all the juices are still hiding in the center. But if you let the meat rest, several things happen. One, you give the meat time for the juices to redistribute uniformly throughout the meat. In a big roast, it might take 10 minutes. In a rack of lamb, it might take 3 to 4 minutes. But all the juices will redistribute. And now when you cut into it, you don't get a bunch of juices that plop out on you because they've been sucked up by the meat. The other thing that happens is let's say you're cooking your meat at 425. Well, it doesn't stop cooking just because you took it out of the oven. The outside stops cooking, which is what you want, but the inside keeps cooking. So instead of having a raw, juicy interior, the inside actually cooks for a few more minutes. So if you want your lamb rare, or medium rare, which is that finger, take it out when it's rare. Because you have to account for what's called residual cook time, which is that extra resting time. Okay?
Is that concept told rule for baking? So you know how you're not, well, I've heard you're not supposed to cut into something as soon as it's come out of the oven that you've baked. And is that so the moisture distributes again, or is that not the same concept?
It's not a moisture thing, but don't cut in. It's fun to cut into bread the second it comes out of the oven, but it's different. It's kind of doughier.
Yeah.
Whereas if you let it sit maybe even overnight, the next day you cut into it, it's real bread. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We want to look at things as quickly as we can. Like we always want to check the rice when it's cooking. It's the worst thing you can do. Don't open that lid. It's a control. I blame it on a control thing. Okay. There you are. Oh, I'm gonna better show everyone. Rack of lamb with the mint and hazelnut pesto. If I were you, I wouldn't try. Those are a little big for eating like an appetizer. I would just slide a couple into your plate and go fork and knife, and I think you'll be happier.
Absolutely wonderful. All right. Well, are you taking a
It's all you.
break? Okay. All right. So what I've chosen to accompany the lamb is the Bodegas Lan D12. It's a Crianza. It's all Tempranillo. And it's a what I call a bright and sassy wine. The reason I chose this wine is very fruity. It reminds me of aromas and flavors of crunchy first of spring black cherry and plums. So it's really full and juicy, just like the lamb. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the texture of the lamb. It complements that to a T. You have a little bit. It's framed by a little nuances of vanilla and toffee. So you have a little bit of sweetness. Lamb is kind of a sweeter meat than, say, beef. So I think it goes well, matches well, and complements the texture of the meat as well. It doesn't overpower it, but it livens it up. It has a really silky structure on the end, and I think the lamb dish with the mint makes it bright and sassy, and this is what I think of the flavors of this wine too as well. But in the end, it does contrast with the fattiness of the meat, so it cuts through what the tannins, which is the red skin part of the grape, because a lot of it is fermented on the skins. So that helps kind of cut through that fat, and you don't even realize it when you're drinking it, which is a good thing. But it does cut through the fat, and it has a real soft and silky ending, which means you don't get the dryness from the tannins when you finish drinking it. You get the texture. You get a smooth texture that kind of complements the roast lamb and finishes it off with a little touch of sweetness, like the cherry thing. It's not a sweet wine; it's still dry, and the tannins will make it dry. But that's why I chose this particular wine over a Shiraz, for instance. Shiraz is supposed to be the ultimate companion to lamb, but I thought this was a better choice because of it being brighter and a little more exciting, a little sassier, what I call sassier. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one with the lamb as well. It's a little lighter bodied than a Shiraz too as well. So another glass.
Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
So if you're at home, the next course we thought might be fun if you wanted to cook along. So get ready, because the next one, if you're cooking at home with us, this is the one. And don't forget, you can ask questions as we're going. We're going to slow the pace down a little bit. So if you do have any questions, I won't rush past them.
So Kate, I have a question for you about the wine. So you talked about the wine's not overwhelming the food. So when you are talking about heavy reds, then what could you eat them with? Because they're just naturally going to be.
Right, the natural, heavy reds, well, with bold and full-bodied, they go a lot better, or they will match a zesty, bold meat. For instance, burgers, calves go well with burgers. When you have barbecue, Zinfandel is absolutely beautiful with that. Italian pasta with the beef meat with it, or a beef bourguignon, for instance, would be awesome with a nice deep red wine, a heavier red wine. Yeah, a lot of the a lot of the heavier wines, especially in Europe, have a little bit more tannins. So when you have a stew meat or some meat with a lot of fat in it, the more tannins you have, the more pleasant that meat becomes and the less oily and fatty it becomes, because the tannins eat it up basically. So yeah, I wish you could lose weight doing that, but it doesn't do that. Yeah.
So with a chili, you might have a heavier red wine than.
Yeah, with chili, that would be, I don't know, what would you choose with a chili? Rob,
Oh, sorry.
what would you choose with a chili? With chili? What
Oh,
kind of wine?
like literally chili?
Yeah, yeah.
A spicy chili? Well, my limited knowledge of wine pairing, anytime somebody says spicy food to me, I think wines like Gewürztraminer, some of those whites with a little bit of sweet to them.
Yeah.
But chili's more of, I would think, a red wine kind of.
I think you really need a white wine, but
So then I would go with something like a Gewürztraminer or a Riesling or something like that.
Riesling is a white. I don't know if I would choose a white with that.
Yeah, I don't
would
think I'd
go
choose a white with a chili
lighter-
either.
I think a Beaujolais or Côte
Oh, yeah.
d'Aron would be really good with that.
That'd be
It's a
fun.
lighter bodied red, and chili is often a blend of meat and spices. Whenever you have in my book, I tend to like blends better because you get more complex flavors in a red blend. I think with a stew or meat or stews, and with like even with chili, when you have a high spice, I think you want to cut the heat of the spice a little bit, as well as complement the red meat. So I would go with a lighter wine, like a Beaujolais or a Côte d'Aron, something like that.
Good question.
Go ahead.
That was a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. Yeah, you're testing me.
Okay, everybody ready to make fettuccine with pistachio lemon pesto? Didn't have a good fettuccine in the grocery store today. And so, just like we were talking about with fish or meats or whatever, if you go to the store and they don't have what you wanted, or they do have what you wanted, but it's a lower quality than what you wanted, don't buy the lower quality. You're just going to go home and have a lower quality dish. And who needs that? So, they didn't have fettuccine, so I got this, pappardelle. It's almost like a fettuccine. It's a wide noodle. It's just a little bit thicker, but I think it'll be delicious. But I also thought to myself, as I was picking it out, what a good lesson for everybody. Even if you go to the store and they don't have the pasta you want, don't buy the cheap pasta. So what makes good pasta? Quite honestly, I would just go with something that's imported from Italy, and then you're fine. If it's American made, it's probably not going to be that great. Not because it's made in America, but because it's a different system for making it. In Italy, you put it through these dyes and you end up with a much rougher exterior, and the rough exterior helps the sauce stick to the pasta. And after all, pasta is, one of its functions is to be a vehicle to get sauce into my mouth. Okay. All right. Let's make our pesto first. So we're not making your standard pesto, because what fun would that be? You already know how to do all that, right? So we're going to mess around. We're going to, instead of the pine nuts, we're going to use pistachios. We're going to measure them absolutely precisely, as you could tell. And we're going to throw in some basil. And the recipe doesn't call for Parmesan, but I also wanted to show you today that you don't have to follow the recipe. You want to throw some Parmesan in there? Throw some Parmesan in there. And some lemon juice.
How do you keep from doing the seeds and the lemon?
Well, that's how I have my hands there. But this lemon has absolutely no seeds at all. Or I brought my handy dandy little lemon squeezer, but that lemon was too big for it anyway. I don't know where it went anyway, but it was just a real, oh, here it is. But I don't even think the lemon will go in there. But you could do this.
But that's a good trick to use your hand.
But it is a good trick, or a little strainer or something like that. Ooh, some mighty lemon. Okay. And some salt. And in this case, I think the olive oil is going to be okay, because basil's really powerful, and it's sort of an Italian dish, and we want that extra virgin element to it. It does call for garlic, though. We need some garlic, huh?
Rob, what do you think of whole wheat pasta? Like, do you approve of whole wheat pasta, or is that like not really
Yeah.
supposed to be a thing?
Well, this will probably tell you how I feel about it. I've never eaten it.
Okay. My daughter's completely against it.
I love your daughter. She and I think a lot alike.
Do you often make your own pasta?
Yeah, we made, so my son was visiting, and he and his girlfriend wanted to make homemade pasta. So we actually made this the other night. We used this pesto as a chance for me to a little practice up for the camera. And we made pappardelle from scratch. It's so easy. If anybody wants, let me know and I will email you the recipe. We used a food processor.
For pasta?
Yep. We put, I think, 2.5 cups of flour in there, a few eggs, some olive oil, and some salt. And we just kept it on until it turned into a ball of dough. Then we put it in this very glass bowl, this exact one, coated it with a little of olive oil. Then we went out for an hour, and then we came back, and we ran it through the pasta machine. Pappardelle is my favorite thing because you can run it through the pasta machine, you just get a flat sheet, and you cut it into just kind of like thick pieces. It's so easy. Anybody that wants, just let me or Katie know at katie@maywehelp.org or rob@maywehelp.org, and we will send you a homemade pasta recipe. It's the easiest thing in the world. Okay, I think everything's there. Katie, by the way, is our development director. I'm the executive director. Brianne is our program director, Brianne Wilkerson, and she's here too. We're a very small team. We're 5 staff, 1 full-timer, 4 part-timers. Yet, we have 75 volunteers. And that's what I love about May We Help. Most nonprofits, you have a staff that sees through the mission of that nonprofit, and the volunteers help the staff to see through that mission. And at May We Help, it's completely reversed. We have 75 volunteers and a handful of staff who help the volunteers see through our mission. And with that mission in mind, if you want to learn more about it, you can go to maywehelp.org. And If you want to support May We Help, you can go to maywehelp.org. And right on our homepage there, you'll see links you can click on. You can click to donate. You can click to visit our silent auction. You can click to learn more about May We Help. And if you support May We Help tonight, well, actually through tomorrow at 11:59. So through Sunday at 11:59, if you support May We Help, very generously, Tire Discounters has offered to match your donation dollar for dollar up to $50,000. So obviously our goal is to raise $50,000 before tomorrow night at 11:59. And we're well on our way, but we're not there yet. So please do go to maywehelp.org and help us meet that $50,000, because if we do, it'll turn into $100,000 and it'll allow us to help that many more people. Okay, there's our pesto. Now we're gonna go cook some pasta. So our pasta water is boiling over there. So it's ready to go except for one thing. And this is the step that so many people forget. Tons of salt. Kind of like ocean water. Because we talked about what goes into your pasta. It's not really that much flavor. Flour, egg, oil, it's just not that much flavor. So it needs a lot of salt. And how do we know when it's done? You can read the package instructions, right? But they're in the trash now, so we're definitely not going to pay any attention to them. Because if they say 7 minutes, but the pasta's done in 6, it's going to be overdone. So what we're going to do is what chefs do. They sit there and they taste it, and they taste it, and they taste it. While we're over here, why don't we check on the lamb? Woohoo! So we're going to do our test, right? Because if you want, you can actually press on it. But I don't know if you can even see it, but it's hot. But there's some give.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? And you'll see when we wait, if we wait 5 minutes, there'll be much less give. Okay? So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to hover over our pasta. And when it gets pretty soft, we're going to start tasting it. And when it has the texture that we, that we want, we're going to pull it out. I'm going to also pull this out because it's going to continue to cook in that hot pan. So the other thing that is really important when you're doing a pesto dish with pasta is to save some of the pesto, or save some of the pasta cooking water. It's so easy to forget to do. And so what I do is I put a big measuring cup in my colander. That way when I go to pour the pot into the colander, I can't because my measuring cup is there, and it reminds me to go get some pasta water. Because the pasta water is filled with starch. And when I add some of that hot, starchy water to the pesto, it makes it really creamy and delicious. Okay. We're almost there. Pappardelle doesn't take that long to cook. Who's ever cooked fresh pasta before? Like if you do the homemade pasta. Okay, so homemade pasta doesn't cook very long at all. In fact, as soon as it floats to the surface, it's pretty much done, which could just be a matter of minutes. Any questions at home?
If you have lifted it from that water, al dente.
Al dente.
They said al dente
Means to the
Yeah,
tooth.
to the tooth. Yeah. How do you prevent it from cooking more as it sits?
So that's a really good point. So you could pull it out just a touch before it's completely done, or you can pour cold water over it. But if you pour cold water over it, if you're making a
cools all
pasta
down.
salad, that's one thing. But if
Yeah.
you pour cold water over it, it's not really that good to have for us. So I would pull it out just a second before it's to the tooth. How's that?
Okay.
Just a split second, not much, but yes. Give it a taste. Too much tooth, but we're really close.
If you don't have a pasta maker, can you kind of roll it out or something, or is that
So there's two.
just too labor intensive?
It's pretty labor intensive,
Yeah.
but you can get a KitchenAid stand mixer and get the pasta attachment, and then you just turn it on and it does everything for you.
okay.
That's the expensive route. But you can get an Atlas hand cranked pasta machine for 40 or 50 bucks. In fact, I know that because my son was so excited about making homemade pasta that he went and Googled Atlas pasta machine because he was so excited to go home and make
Okay.
homemade pasta.
Who's the better chef, you or your son?
He's getting really good. He's getting really good. But if you're listening, Reed, he overdoes everything, which is, he doesn't show any restraint yet, but he's a young guy. No young guys show restraint.
Do you hear that, Reed? Your dad's throwing shade.
He likes to put this in and put that in, put this in and put that in, put this in and put that in. And I that's exactly the opposite of what we did today. We used neutral flavored oils, so certain ingredients, flavors shined, right? He likes to throw it all in there. And he also puts sriracha on everything. That's a whole different story. That's a whole different story. Okay, we're almost there. We're gonna, before I forget, we're gonna,
Nikki wants to know if you add more oil to the pesto.
what happens?
No, she said, do we add more oil to the pesto?
Yes, we're gonna add more oil. Yes, until it's the consistency that you want it to be. But don't forget, because of this trick with adding the pasta starch water, you might not need the pesto to be as loose as usually is, because this is gonna loosen it up too. You'll see when we do it together. Good question, Nikki. All right, there's our pasta water. Oh, we got a little pasta with it. All right, now I don't have to worry about forgetting this. I'll put this over with us in the kitchen. Get our colander back. And my daughter's the baker in the family. And she's a better baker than I am. All right, we're good. Thanks, man. Pasta, pesto. We never tasted this, did we? Oh, that's good. I'm just going to take it off. Pair of tongs. Oh, there. And here, this is the trick. So you take this cooking water, put it right over the pesto.
That's a lot of pesto water.
I know, it's way more than you'd ever think you were going to use. I had the exact,
Is it over the pesto or the pasta? Sorry.
either one, but I did the pesto. You don't have to be exact,
Okay.
but mostly pesto. And I'm even going to do more.
Pesto's on, you add the
Correct. But it just transforms it into this creamy yumminess.
So maybe share that with the viewers.
Yep.
Once the pesto sauce is on, that's when you dump the water on. There was confusion.
Sorry, right now. So pesto went on top, a little bit of pasta water.
Do you only use the pasta water when you have pesto with it? Is there any
Is there any other application for
Yeah.
pasta water? Other sauces, yes. Yes, I'm trying to think of what they are. Well, quite honestly, anytime you do it and maybe it's just a little dry, what are you going to do? You could put oil on there, but sometimes you don't want oil. You can't take water out of your spigot. That just won't work because it doesn't have the starchiness. So you could always reserve a little bit of pasta water and know that you're probably, in good shape. And let me get you a couple bowls. Oh, well, I guess the plate will work, right, huh? Okay, so we'll serve this up.
Is that yellow color because of all the eggs in there? Or is it coloring?
The pasta itself,
Yeah.
I think it is made with a lot of eggs.
Okay.
Okay, enjoy. All right, Kate, it's all you.
Thank you. I'll take care of these things back here.
That's going to be hard to beat.
You're complimenting.
Complimenting the wine, that's right. All right, smells absolutely delicious. The wine we're going to use to pair with this pasta, and I can just smell the basil right now, it sounds absolutely delicious, is a little known wine from a very small appellation in southern France. It's called, the grape is called Picpoul de Pinet. And Pinet is where it comes from. It's a real tiny, I think it's like a few, like double-digit acres. That's it. It's not very much. And there's a women team, a mother-daughter women team. They're called Gojal is their last name, and they grow this wine. They grow the grapes themselves. It's one of the few acreages left for this grape, and it's an indigenous grape to France, to that southern appellation. They have cultivated themselves, and amazingly enough, they ferment it on the skins for quite a long time, for 7 to 8 months. Traditionally, white wines are never fermented or left on the skins, which is the lees, for not a very long time. It's usually left on the lees for maybe a week, if that, for a few days. And that's because white wines, most grapes have white interior, or a lot of them do, with red skins. And you don't want the tannins from the skins to affect the taste of the pressed juice. So white wines are usually not fermented that long. With Picpoul, it's totally different. This is very little manipulated, so you get the taste of the actual grape on here. To me, this grape has a little bit of a creaminess to it, which complements the pasta. Meaning it's got a little bit of body to it. It is still dry, but the aromas are mostly of lemon, honeysuckle, very soft, not real sweet, but you still get that little fruity component of the honeysuckle in there. It's a typical Mediterranean climate, so it's very high acidity, very juicy grape, and it complements, I think, the basil and the lemon flavors and texture of the lemon and the basil. It kind of makes them shine because it enhances them. So it's barely sweet enough to tone down that acidity, and at the same time, you've got the right refreshing finish from the white wine, the dryness that kind of finishes it off, like the texture of the pasta. I guess that's what I can say about that.
Incredible.
Any questions?
Thanks, Kate.
Delicious.
You're welcome.
So thanks, everyone. You mentioned the silent auction item that you can go to, or our auction. And a couple of the things that you can bid on are dinners. So I'm doing a dinner and a cooking class. It would be exactly like this, except it could be any dishes that you want to learn. So go to our website, maywehelp.org, click on Visit Our Auction, and bid on a dinner and cooking class. You can also bid on John Mock's cooking class. Do you have anything to? Do you
Not
want?
much of a cooking class.
I mean, I'm sorry, his dinner, his gourmet dinner.
Gourmet dinner cooked in your home, Chateau Bouillon, prepared tableside, lobster bisque, and a few other delicious creations.
And I'll be helping. I'll be assisting John in the kitchen. All right, I have to now. I have to do a really good job too. Thanks, John. So and everybody, I think everybody that's probably watching knows about May We Help and what we do. That we create custom devices for people with disabilities. But what you may not know are some of the new programs that we've implemented in the last couple of years. One is our adaptive equipment swap, which we just held last Sunday. And we started that in March of last year. And it has already matched over 275 people with well over $1 million worth of life-changing adaptive equipment. The other new program that we've implemented is our Adaptive Sports Innovation Program. And that just is a focus on people with disabilities who are doing adaptive sports. And it's a really specialized team of a rehab doctor, a physical therapist, and equipment modification experts. And so if you happen to, if you have suddenly find yourself with a disability or in a wheelchair, for example, and you want to do an adaptive sport, where do you turn? There's nowhere really to turn. They could go to Cincinnati Rec and they can tell you what Cincinnati Rec is doing, but you can come to, which is great, but you can come to us and we'll tell you that everything that's an opportunity for you out there in Greater Cincinnati. And what's more, we'll give you, an evaluation from our therapist and be able to guide you to what sports are best suited for you. And we'll be able to customize and modify equipment that'll be specific for your body and your needs. So that's another new program. And then yet another new program is our annual Halloween festival. I guess it's not new if it's an annual festival, but it's fairly new. And we are taking requests for custom Halloween costumes. And the way that works is it's a really big custom costume that actually mounts to your power chair. So you don't even qualify to get one of these unless you're in a manual or a power wheelchair. But you can put in that request. We're taking requests for costumes now. And if we're allowed to hold it, you can debut your costume at our Halloween festival. And if not, you can just take it home and do Halloween that way. We have some questions.
Yeah, Nikki Wood wants to know when the auction is ending.
The auction's ending tomorrow night at 11:59. Everything, our week of celebration ends tomorrow night at 11:59. But thanks, Nikki, for asking that. Any other questions? That's a really good one. All right. Well, then I think.
One more thing.
Oh, yes, please.
Yes. I've always wanted to say this if I was ever on TV. Hi, Mom and Dad.
Ah,
From Pittsburgh.
that's hilarious.
I told them I'd give them a shout out. So. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
And we do want to thank Joe and Lorraine Marinick. This is their fabulous home. They offered it up to us last year, too. They're just huge supporters of May We Help, and we can't thank you enough, Joe and Lorraine. And all of you out there watching and supporting May We Help, thank you very, very much.